The first time I saw Rachel cry was the day Mark left for deployment. It was pouring rain, and she stood on the porch with her toddler in one arm and a folded American flag in the other. He wasn't dead, thank God, but he was going to be gone for 14 months. I was the best man at their wedding, and I made a promise that day, I'd look after her and the kid like they were my own. That's where this story really begins. Not in betrayal, not in scandal, but in something far more complicated. My name's Jake. I'm 34. I work construction, love football, and haven't gotten love right since my high school sweetheart cheated on me with a Marine. Funny how things come full circle. Rachel and I grew up in the same town, same street. We went to the same schools. She was the girl every guy crushed on but never dared approach, until Mark did. He was brave, loyal, the kind of guy who ran into burning buildings while the rest of us hesitated. Of course she fell for him. We all did, in one way or another. So when Mark asked me to be his best man, I said yes without blinking. But life after marriage isn't a fairy tale. Not when your husband is halfway across the world, dodging bullets and counting the days until he's home. Rachel started leaning on me more. For groceries. For babysitting. For broken sinks and bad days. And I was happy to help, because it felt like helping him, too. But then something shifted. It was a Tuesday. I remember because it was trash day. I came over to take the bins out and found her crying on the kitchen floor. She didn't hear me come in. She was gripping a letter. Mark had been injured. A roadside bomb. Not fatal, but serious enough they had to fly him to Germany. I held her that night. Just held her. No lines crossed. But that was the moment everything became different. I don't know what I'd do without you, Jake, she whispered one night, weeks later. You've been here more than anyone else. And then she said it. Quiet. Almost ashamed. Sometimes I feel closer to you than to him. I froze. Not because I hadn't thought it. But because I had, and hated myself for it. But I looked at her and realized something deeper. It wasn't about love or lust. It was about presence. She was starving for connection, and I was the only one feeding it. That's when I knew what she really wanted. She didn't want an affair. She didn't want me to betray my best friend. She wanted hope. She wanted to feel seen. Safe. Human. So I did something most men wouldn't. I backed away. Not coldly. Not cruelly. I set boundaries. I found her a support group. Got her connected with other military wives. I dropped by less and called more. I reminded her how strong she was. I told her stories about Mark's courage, his humor, his love for her. I helped her remember who she was married to. And when Mark came home, scarred but alive, I was the first one to hug him. He never knew how close I came to betraying him. And maybe I did, in thoughts I never spoke aloud. But I also saved something that mattered more than pride, their marriage. Months later, at a backyard barbecue, Rachel pulled me aside. Thank you, she said, eyes shimmering. You could have taken advantage. But instead, you saved me from myself. I shrugged. Tried to joke. Just doing what Mark would have done for me. She smiled, but I saw something deeper, respect, grace, gratitude. We don't talk much about those months anymore. But something unspoken passed between us that day, a recognition of how fragile we are, and how powerful kindness can be when it chooses restraint over desire. Mark and I still watch football every Sunday. Rachel sends me a pie every Thanksgiving. And me? I learned that real love doesn't always look like romance. Sometimes, it looks like stepping back, so others can step forward. The year after Mark returned, life seemed normal on the outside. But war leaves marks that don't show up in X-rays. Mark had a limp. Night terrors. Sometimes he stared off into nothing. He'd been the guy who lit up every room, now he barely spoke. Rachel was patient. But I saw it in her eyes: exhaustion, loneliness, fear. Not of Mark, but of losing him slowly, emotionally, bit by bit. One evening, Mark called me over. He was drinking more than usual, and the house was tense. Rachel had taken the kids to her mom's. He sat on the porch in silence, and I joined him, watching the sun dip behind the trees like a heavy sigh. "Jake," he said, voice low, "do you think I'm still me?" I didn't answer right away. What do you say to a man who lost a part of himself? I finally said, "You're more than you were. Because you came back for them. And you're still standing, even when it hurts." He looked at me like he wanted to believe it, but couldn't. Then he said something that stopped me cold. Rachel told me what almost happened. My heart dropped. He didn't look angry. Just broken. And that was worse. She said you pulled away. That you saved us. His voice cracked. I don't even know how to thank you. I swallowed hard. All the words in my throat burned. You don't have to, I said. You would have done the same for me. He nodded slowly, and for the first time since he'd returned, his eyes softened. That night, we didn't talk much more. But the silence between us wasn't awkward. It was peace. It was understanding. It was forgiveness. 6 months later, I was best man again, this time at their vow renewal ceremony. Mark stood straighter. Rachel smiled brighter. Their kids, now a little older, ran circles around our feet. I stood off to the side, watching them say I do all over again. And as Rachel's eyes met mine for the briefest second, I knew we both understood something unspoken. We had walked to the edge of a line, and chosen honor over impulse, loyalty over loneliness. It had hurt. But it had healed something, too. Today, I tell this story not because it's clean or easy, but because it's real. In a world where betrayal is common and self-interest rules the day, sometimes the bravest thing you can do is walk away from what you want, so someone else can hold on to what they need most. Love doesn't always wear the face of romance. Sometimes, it's a quiet act of integrity. A word unspoken. A hand extended in strength, then gently pulled back. I'm not a hero. I've made my share of mistakes. But in that chapter of my life, I learned something timeless. The truest friendships are forged in fire, and the greatest love stories aren't always your own. And I wouldn't change a thing. Years passed. Mark eventually got better. Not fixed, because trauma isn't a door you just close, but better. He started volunteering at the local Veterans Center, sharing his story with younger soldiers. That gave him purpose again. Rachel? She went back to school, got a degree in counseling, and now works with military families, helping others who walk the road she once did. As for me? I moved to another town. Not far, just enough to let their life breathe. I still visit a few times a year. Birthdays. Barbecues. The occasional emergency home repair. But one visit changed everything. It was Rachel and Mark's daughter's 10th birthday. They had a small party at the park, balloons, pizza, water guns. The usual chaos. At one point, little Mia, their youngest, came running up to me. She looked up with her big brown eyes and asked, completely out of the blue, "Uncle Jake, why don't you have a family?" I laughed awkwardly, but before I could answer, she added, "Mom says you gave yours away, so we could keep ours." It hit me like a punch to the chest. Rachel must have told them. Maybe not the details, but the essence. That I'd stood in the gap for them when everything was about to collapse. And right there, with frosting on her cheek and a balloon in her hand, a child gave me more peace than I ever thought I'd earn. Later that night, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Mark handed me a drink and sat beside me on the back porch. We watched the kids chase fireflies, their laughter echoing in the dusk. "You ever regret it?" he asked softly. I didn't answer right away. I looked out at the family in front of me, the family I helped protect, not by fighting, but by letting go. "No," I said finally. Because I never lost anything. I got something most people never do. He raised an eyebrow. What's that? I smiled. The chance to do the right thing when it really mattered. These days, I mentor young men, vets, mostly. I tell them my story. I don't glamorize it. I don't pretend I'm some saint. But I tell them this. Your instincts might tell you to act. To take. To want. But real strength? It's knowing when to step back, not forward. When to protect, not possess. When to love quietly, without needing to be loved back. Because that's what Rachel really wanted all along, not romance. Not rescue. She wanted someone to see her pain, hold space for her grief, and remind her of the woman she almost forgot she was. And maybe, just maybe, that's what we all want. To be seen. To be held. To be reminded that even when the world breaks us down, humanity still has the power to lift us up. So if you take anything from this story, let it be this. Sometimes, the greatest impact you'll ever have won't be celebrated. It won't be written in lights. It'll be felt, in the quiet survival of a marriage, the laughter of a child, or the unspoken gratitude in someone's eyes. Do the right thing, even when no one's watching. Because someone always is. And that's where real legacy begins.